essential, transcendental. Sit with the guru. Meditation. Where eagles fly.
All right, hello there, thrill seekers. And that was a little snippet of a song called Sit with the Guru. That was a song I'd known for a long time, but it was kind of reintroduced to me by my friend and bandmate in Zero Defects, Jeff Hardy, who was telling me one day, oh, I heard that song Sit with the Guru by Strawberry Alarm Clock, old 60s psychedelic band, and I thought of you. And I thought, oh, that's kind of funny that he would think of me hearing that song. So I decided to put together my own version of it, and there you heard it. I put it up on the on this YouTube channel last week, so maybe some of you watched it already, but I thought I would point it out now so that other people would get to see it. So there you go, Sit with the Guru, a meditation. Ooh. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about an essay called Komyo, and I've been talking about it a lot on this video channel. And I also put out a 5-part, that is 5 big parts, podcast about it on my podcast, which is called the Hardcore Zen Podcast. And that podcast is hosted by Podbean, and Podbean supposedly puts it out wherever podcasts are. I know that I can find it on Spotify, and it's also on iTunes, and supposedly they put it out on all the podcast platforms. So wherever you find your podcasts, go look for the Hardcore Zen Podcast. Komyo can be found in Book 2 of the Nishijima Cross translation of Shobo Genzo. It is in Book 1 of the Tanahashi et al. Version of Shobo Genzo. It's also in the Hubert Neerman translation of Shobo Genzo, and the Hubert Neerman and the Nishijima Cross versions of Shobo Genzo. They are both available for free as PDFs that you can download online. I'm not sure where you can find the Hubert Neerman one, but I always find it by Googling Hubert Neerman, Shasta Abbey, Shobo Genzo. I know where you can find the Nishijima Cross version, though. You can find it on shobogenzo.net, and you can also find it on my own blog, hardcorezen.info. Both of those have links to where you can download the PDF of the Nishijima Cross version of Shobo Genzo if you want to find that translation of Komyo, or indeed any of Shobo Genzo. And I've been talking about it, I think, as I said, on this video channel too. So this is an essay in which Dogen talks about light as a way of talking about the ultimate nature of things. And so I've decided to make that a big part of my upcoming book. And don't ask me what my upcoming book is about or when it's coming out, because I don't know yet. I've only just recently kind of figured out what sort of basic direction this book is taking and started writing in that direction, but it's still early days yet. So yesterday, when trying to write about Dogen's, I'm trying to write something sort of based on what I said in the podcast, which I just told you where you can find it, about Komyo. And yesterday I hit upon something about Komyo and about Dogen's approach to this idea of light in general that I thought I would share with you. So to get you acquainted with what it says in Komyo, I'll just read you the beginning of the essay, in which Dogen quotes an old poem by a master named Great Master Chosa Shoken. And here is the poem. The whole universe in 10 directions is the eye of a Shramana. A Shramana is a monk. The whole universe in 10 directions is the everyday speech of a Shramana. The whole universe in 10 directions is the whole body of a Shramana. The whole universe in 10 directions is the light of the self. The whole universe in 10 directions exists within the light of the self. In the whole universe in 10 directions, there is no one who is not the self. So he goes on from there, Dogen does, to talk about light and the self and how light is everything and everything is light. And so yesterday I was writing and I kind of hit upon this kind of idea, and I want to read to you what I wrote yesterday. And this isn't really a spoiler in terms of what the book will be, because I just wrote this yesterday, and between now and when the book is actually published, I'm sure I will make tremendous changes. And like I said, I don't even know when this book is going to come out, but I'm pretty sure some form of this will come out eventually. So here's what I wrote yesterday in part. So here we go. Light is kind of mystical, if you think about it. It's all around us. You are reading this book either on paper illuminated by some kind of light or on an electronic device that emits light, like this one. Even if you're listening to this in audiobook form, I'll bet there's some kind of light involved. Light is everywhere. We human beings are primarily guided by our sense of vision, and so light is particularly important to us. If my dog Ziggy's ancestors had written their own version of the Bible, perhaps their version of God would have started up the universe by saying, "Let there be smell." We have a considerable amount of scientific knowledge about light. It can be considered as particles or as waves. We know its speed. We believe that no material object can move faster than light. But I think we're mistaken if we start thinking that our possession of scientific knowledge about light means we understand what light really is. It's still a mystery. Dogen lived in a time when science wasn't as highly developed as it is today. But he starts off his essay by explaining that the light he's going to be talking about isn't red, white, blue, or gold. It's not like sunlight or moonlight or the light of lightning bugs. In other words, it's not the kind of light that science studies. But even though I just said some stuff about Dogen using light as a metaphor, he actually takes great care to tell us that he is not just speaking metaphorically. I know that sounds contradictory, and it is. Dogen loved being contradictory. And then I go into kind of a few paragraphs in which I explain how he says that what he's talking about is real light, is actual light, and some of the kind of linguistic niceties that he uses to make it clear that even though it might sound like he's talking metaphorically, and in some senses he is kind of talking metaphorically, he really wants us to understand that this is actually light he's talking about, and not just some kind of metaphoric light, not just some kind of spiritual brightness, but light, okay? So he takes great pains, and he's a bit repetitive. So he's really trying to make sure we understand that it's light he's talking about, and not, light as an image or an abstraction. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of give you the short version of that. Okay, so now back to what I wrote. Intriguing, isn't it? It is to me. There are a lot of ways one could take this. For example, light is energy. These days, we know that energy and matter are fundamentally the same thing. In Dogen's time, this was not understood as a scientific principle. But I think it's plausible that he and other Buddhists had an intuitive sense of this. Perhaps they understood this principle even more thoroughly than today's scientists understand it. They understood, perhaps, that their own experience was one of energy and matter, the experience of energy manifesting as thought, feeling, sensation, and the other aspects of mind, and the experience of matter in the form of body in the material world. Through their meditation practice, they came to realize that these were different aspects of the same thing. Not having a sophisticated scientific vocabulary to work with, Dogen and his predecessors may have used the word light to indicate energy in general. Having just said that, I don't think it's quite right. It's a way of looking at Dogen's words that I think might be easier for a 21st century reader to accept than Dogen's 12th century expression, but I'm not sure it's really any closer to the mark. It's easy for someone of our time to simply write off Dogen and indeed the entire lineage of Buddhist ancestors as a bunch of simple-minded primitive people who lack the far more advanced knowledge of our much more enlightened age. I'll assume that most people who would read a book like this are not as inclined to do that as a lot of people might be. But even I find myself sliding into something like that sort of attitude from time to time, and I do. But I think we are wrong to dismiss the tools of meditative inquiry lightly. We are very impressed by our superconductors, our electron microscopes, our orbital telescopes, and our other gadgets. We've become very good at looking outward. Yet in becoming so good at searching for answers outside of ourselves, we've sacrificed the ability to search inward. Dogen and his predecessors devoted their lives to very disciplined research into the inner world. They preserved their findings for us in documents just as detailed as any scientific research study. And often, these documents are just as difficult for people unfamiliar with the methodology they used to read and understand, as scientific research studies are difficult for non-scientists to comprehend. Still, they shouldn't be dismissed just because they sound weird to us or just because they come from a supposedly less knowledgeable time. Remember, human beings individually are no smarter now than they were 10,000 or even 100,000 years ago. The geniuses of 800 years ago devoted themselves to different ways of study than the geniuses of today. And that's as far as I got yesterday in writing. But it's something that, I don't know, I may just work that into the big theme of the book. I don't know if it's good enough to work into the major theme of the book, but it's something I feel really strongly about. And it was kind of inspired by a snarky comment I got. Okay, I don't know which book of mine I did this in, but in some book a few years ago, I made a kind of a side comment. Dogen makes some reference in one of his essays to mountains walking. And I made a little side comment that I said something like, oh, maybe Dogen understood intuitively the science of plate tectonics without really knowing the science. And somebody made a snark comment like, you're so dumb you think Dogen understood plate tectonics, what an idiot you are. You know, some snarky comment about that. And now, of course, I didn't think that Dogen understood the full science of plate tectonics in all its intricacies. Like, obviously, I don't know if this idiot who wrote to me thought I was implying that. No, obviously not. But a person in Dogen's time, especially a Japanese person in Dogen's time, could have understood in an earthquake-prone country that things that seem solid and immovable like mountains may move. Mountains and rivers. He probably, even during his lifetime, was aware of rivers changing course and of large objects that seem immovable sometimes moving, and might have been aware of stories being passed down from older generations of things changing, and could have been, could have extrapolated from that the idea that this solid earth, which seems immovable, does move around. And so this idea of mountains walking may have come in part from that. And it might have been partially kind of a mystical idea of mountains walking in a kind of a mystical sense, and might have been a more concrete idea of yes, the earth actually does move around, as we know it does today. And so from that, there are ideas, I think, we dismiss these sort of ancient people as being unknowledgeable about things that we think, oh, yeah, we know all about that today, and they didn't know anything about that. Yeah. But I think they may have known a lot of things that we don't know. And I think we shouldn't take their knowledge for granted, no, that isn't what I mean. I don't think we should poo-poo their knowledge. I'm being inarticulate right now because I'm kind of talking off the top of my head, and when I'm writing, I'm a little better. But I think maybe you can tell what I mean. I don't think we should poo-poo their knowledge or think that they're just a bunch of dumb primitives. And when we read something like Dogen talking about light, I think there may be something really in there that we today should pay attention to and shouldn't be so keen to sort of dismiss as just the dumb ravings of a primitive person. And like I said in the writing, I don't think probably people who are watching a video channel like this one or reading books like the ones I write are the type who are going to be inclined to dismiss that stuff so easily, but I think a lot of people are. And maybe some of you watching this channel might actually be those kind of people, and I don't think we should do that. And I think it's important that we don't do that. And I think we can look at ancient people and realize there were Einstein level and Stephen Hawking level and whoever else you want to put in there level of geniuses operating 800 years ago or 1,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago. People who were just as smart as the smartest smart people are today, but they were working with different tools and working in different areas from the areas that our geniuses today work in. And I think Dogen was one of those people. I think Dogen was one of the great geniuses of his time and his place, and he was working in an area which people just don't work in these days. And you have to think, this was a time, today we have a lot of distractions that people in Dogen's time just didn't have. Think about this. If I want to hear the greatest musicians in the world of all time, well, maybe not of all time, but at least of all time since the past 70 to 100 years, playing the greatest music ever composed, all I have to do is go blip, 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 type out some things on my little keyboard, and within seconds, bing, there they are on my little headphones in perfectly crystal clear sound. Or if I want, I can even watch them, most of them, in high definition, and there they are, bing. Think about that level of distraction and entertainment that's available to me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anytime I want it. Even the most wealthy kings and sultans and what have you, I don't know what you can think of, around in Dogen's time didn't have that kind of distraction available to them. So they really had an ability to concentrate on the things they wanted to concentrate on, which even our geniuses of today, they've got too many distractions available to them. I don't think even our geniuses have the kind of focus available to them that a person of Dogen's time or a person of the past did. And so I think there's something to be said for that. And, I think we should really pay attention to what they had to say to us. So there you go. There's my little rant about geniuses of the past. I have no idea what I'll title this video, but you do, because you already saw the title, so you know something I don't know. Anyway, if you want to donate to me saying more stuff like this, you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts. Those are my main ways of making a living, and I really appreciate your support. But as always, you don't have to support me if you don't want to support me. We will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Laters. Bye.
Alright, there's Ziggy on his little bed. You guys don't know it, but up until I started making this video, Ziggy was very active and walking around and following me everywhere this morning. Now he just laid down on his bed. Alright, Ziggy, I'm gonna go edit the video. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Stretch your mind to humanity. How many tomorrows can you see? How many tomorrows can you